Going live. Right. And we are live. This is Michael Sky back with Hans Comain on Ronin Radio. So, Hans and I are talking today about how men let truth get in the way, well, of a lot of things, but especially their transformation into becoming the men they want to be. Hans, do you want to set up some context here?
That's actually great, to look at it that way, and I didn't. But um, Mark Twain said, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And it makes perfect sense to me. I adapted it to say, never let the truth get in the way of a good seduction. Um, but in larger sense, I remember at a young age shifting from wondering what was true to wondering what works. And I say it was a conscious choice because I am schooled as an academic, and in this scientific world, the truth is really an accepted inquiry. It's like the basic inquiry. We got to know the truth. Um, but I found very young that the truth did not necessarily help me, and so I'm not so
Well,
much interested in the truth as I am in what works.
it's the biggest way that we deceive ourselves, actually.
Mm.
The guy denying responsibility for some aspect of his life or his reality can give you lots of true excuses, all of which come together to form a story which make him look not that's not his fault. He's not responsible. So we
Yes.
use the truth all the time to lie to ourselves, lie to other people, and avoid our responsibility. And when I was, spending years working with my younger brothers and then young men and criminals and drug addicts who I took into my landscaping business as a kind of boot camp for manhood, this was this is a primary learning, for especially for men who want to train and coach other boys or young men on being men. Most of the shit that comes out of the mouth of a guy who is not identified with being very masculine, and by that I mean just continually looking to take on more and more responsibility and make no excuses. Um, Most of what comes out of their mouth is going to be a rationalization for not taking on more responsibility or for not being a man or a warrior, et cetera, et cetera. So, when dealing with coaching and training these kinds of guys, that's what my ear is constantly attuned to. And
Yes.
it's not like they're consciously trying to lie to me or to themselves, but their identity is confronted by the reality that I'm calling them to.
Yes.
And their identity their consciousness wants to escape back to this comfort zone where they don't feel the pressure, the
Yes.
greater pressures of responsibility.
Well, you could even say that locating a truth outside of yourself really is an avoidance of responsibility, you know? Meaning there's a world out there and with facts and truth, and if things are that way and I'm focusing on things that are in fact, you know, and that are the truth about the world, that's all. Just by that focus, we're taking away our focus from our creative power. We're taking away the energy from what we could be creating in this moment to what is true, and just the focus itself is an avoidance of accepting responsibility, stepping or taking more responsibility, is an avoidance of of accepting your full creative power is an avoidance of choosing choice. It's an avoidance of announcing that I am ultimately, unequivocally in charge of my own choice. But it's true, and someone will listen to it now and say, well, I'm not sure. I'm not, it's isn't it like this? And they will go into the discussion about the truth of it, and that's again, being dragged into that instead of saying, hey, I'm the creator of the world I live in. I choose to be the creator of the world I live in. I choose as like a heuristic principle, not an ontological one about the truth of the world, as a heuristic principle, meaning I choose to live that way. I choose to live as if I am ultimately and unequivocally in charge of my own choice. And so it's just a matter of energy. You could be given energy to the truth inquiry, which is at times interesting. I studied philosophy. It's a great inquiry. Energy from creating itself, from taking on more responsibility and creating the world you want to live in. So yes, it's
I have a tool. I have a self-guidance tool that I named Sky's Sword, which applies directly to this. And I make the distinction between the truth or truth, honesty, and validity. Okay. Truth, honesty, and validity. And rationalizations work to keep us lazy and to keep the blame off of ourselves and to get us back to comfort zone. These are these are usually not lies we tell ourselves. These are usually truths that we tell ourselves. But and the reason why it works, truths work better than lies if you want to evade responsibility. Because if something is obviously untrue, your own psyche is not going to be comfortable with that. Your own psyche is going to be like, you're lying, motherfucker, you're lying, motherfucker. But if you're spinning a narrative based on a lot of individual truths, then you feel a lot more comfortable with this bullshit, with the bullshit narrative. So you see lawyers doing this in a court case, and they ask you a bunch of true, false questions. Is it true that you were here on the night of January 6th and blah, blah, blah? Is it also true? No, and they interrupt you if you try to add context to make your reply more honest and more contextual with the actual reality. They don't want to hear that. They want to
yes,
take these isolated truths, spin them together in a narrative that makes a case where you're guilty, you're wrong, or whatever, spins a false reality. And we do the same thing when we make a case about the other based on our judgments, right? When we are resentfully judging our fathers, we focus on isolated truths, which are evidence for
mm,
our conclusion that this is who he is. And it's self-deceptive,
mm,
and it's destructive. And then we also use this to get people on our side against our father or against the other, right? Like it's used for evil, you could say, or for destruction.
yeah,
Truth is all the time. So honesty, shifting from truth to honesty, when I say, okay, I'm interested in honesty, not truth. Well, when the lawyer asks me the question, or when I ask myself some kind of question about reality, I want to let myself speak, add the context, add the full context. Now, um, even honesty, like there could be two people telling their honest experience of the same event in reality. But what's interesting here is one honest account could lead you and others in a certain direction, whereas another honest account could lead yourself and others in another honest direction. So if we really want to be powerful creators, like you said, Hans, leaders and creators, we want to take responsibility for where is my honest account of what happened leading myself and others. And if what you want for yourself is a transformation into a more powerful man, a greater creator and leader, then you want to take account of how is the way that I'm speaking or talking making me into this more powerful creator or moving me away from being a more powerful creator. Hans, you disappeared there for a few moments on the live stream. Now you're back.
Yes. I heard what you said about the truth, and then you went into honesty,
Honesty.
and I didn't get to leap. You can hear me?
Yeah. So, yes. So the validity is the third distinction: truth, honesty,
Hmm.
validity. And validity takes into account what you were saying before, what works, right? Validity takes into account your goal. And if what we want to be is more responsible, powerful men, leaders, and creators, then the way that we're telling a story, even if we're being honest, or the way that we are thinking or speaking, we want to take responsibility for where is this leading me and where is this leading others? Is this leading me to grow as a leader and a creator? Is this leading in an upward spiral in the alliance? Is this potentially leading to the alliance falling apart? So it's a higher level of responsibility, which makes a huge difference. And so, Hans, as we
Yeah.
are working as transformational agents or coaches for other men, it's a very important distinction for us to operate from. But also, if they can understand this distinction and and be called to reflect on where is their current thinking or speaking leading them.
Well, a question then, because I think this distinction is very, very insightful. Have you find that the conceptual understanding of it could get someone to take more responsibility? Because that's what it is. It's like when I come upon someone I am working with, and I try to get them to take more responsibility for their life, and I'm faced with their excuses and rationalizations, and often in terms of like truth, um, I'm always like fighting to find a way for them to take more responsibility, and and it's almost as if one can only understand this distinction if one is already taking more responsibility. And so I'm wondering if it's helping you when you're working with guys to lay that out and that a guy goes, oh, I get it now. I have not been taking responsibility by just talking about the truth. Because in my experience, when I lay out the distinction between focus not on what is true, but focus on what works, are you happy? Are you transforming? Are you alive? Do you feel good? No. And so why are you not focusing on that and let the truth be instrumental to that inquiry? It seems like it's almost like a catch 22. It's almost like you need to have a guy who's already taken full responsibility for his life to understand that. And I'm trying to use it
Well,
for a guy to get it.
well, yeah, it makes a big difference if they've already signed on to being fully responsible, and they understand that their own programming is the biggest thing in their way, and so they're trying to decipher that more. They're trying to understand this faulty programming that's misleading them. That is very helpful. But yeah, one challenge I see in the way that you described It is like focus not on what's true, but what works. And the way I've heard you talk about it sometimes is they could get that you're trying to get them to take the position that truth doesn't matter at all. It's only what works. I've heard you kind of describe it sometimes. And so that I think guys could be presented with a dilemma, feeling like, no, truth and reality matter. And so they're fighting, they could be fighting that to some extent, not just fighting for their laziness or irresponsibility, right? So I
Yes.
think that it's helpful to not, they don't need to choose between truth and what works. They can see how you can show how truth can be used to lie and mislead yourself and others, and anyone can acknowledge that. I mean, I don't think that's something that people are going to disagree over. And you could work with someone to say, is that true? Okay, yes, that's true, they might say, speaking of some particular thing that they've said or believe. And then with honesty, you might ask them, what important context are you leaving out? You know, what important context are you leaving out that if you put it on the table, that if you acknowledged it, might incline you to maybe make a different decision or take more responsibility? And then, yeah, so definitely there are ways of doing this, and at least for myself, it works as someone who is let's say a coach, because I'm it's so in my consciousness that it's like I see the movie The Matrix. I see the code running all the time, because mostly what people are doing is protecting their image, not not honor or their personal growth or the things they say are most important to them. Mostly, we are protecting our image, and that's most of what comes out of people's mouth most of the time. So this really helps in a lot of ways. For example, with your woman who may be emotional and she's reactive and she's spinning some story that you can tell is not true, right? But she's really wound up in it, and you start fighting on the level of truth with her. No, that's not true, and you guys are debating over what's true, and that's very unlikely to help the situation. So yeah, anyway, it's a fundamental. If I were to create a some kind of academy on coaching or being a transformational leader or facilitator, this is a fundamental distinction for me. Should we give an example?
Well done. Well, we sure could.
There's one thing we've done we've talked about this in the abstract without giving any examples.
Well, for example, I got one recently. I'm working with a guy, and I come to the point where I see that his way out of suffering and way forward would be to take on more responsibility, and and when the topic is raised, the first comeback is an intellectual one that asks me, well, isn't it so that I can only take more responsibility when I'm given the authority? And I'm like, what? And I can see it's a real, it's an existing philosophical discussion, and you might get some people on board to discuss it. And it might be an interesting discussion. But in the work that we're doing, which is your transformation of becoming a man, getting everything you want, that discussion is of no use In fact, it's going to block you from taking more responsibility. When you spend energy there in that philosophical discussion, you were not you were taking energy away from the quest for becoming a more powerful man. You're taking energy away from your own transformation. You're taking energy away from what you said to me was important to you. Yeah. And so, like, just to entertain that question, if I am to answer that question, I'm contributing to him not transforming, and so I
Yeah.
cannot go there. I cannot go there.
This is
So that's a
I'm leading a program right now called the Honor Quest, which you are supporting me with right now with a group of men. And there was recently certain conversations in that group that I just ignored, because I don't want to derail the whole group on some kind of intellectual journey or masturbation that potentially could have some people moving away from from their commitment in the group, from what they came for. 100%. This is, it's a lot more comfortable to engage in the intellectual masturbation, the intellectual discussion, rather than face our real lives with real responsibility, real decisions we might have to make, real consequences. Yeah, it's so.
well, I wouldn't say what's real. I would just make the distinction of like like between the inquiry about what's true and the inquiry about everything we agreed on that we work on, which is your power, which is your transformation, which is you becoming a greater man, which is you being better with women. Within that game, if we're playing that game, if we're going for that, if that's your deepest yearning and desire, we cannot have this discussion. In fact, you bringing up that question is you fighting the transformation deep down you would want. It's running away from it.
Yeah, it's like the analogy I'm thinking of right now is with baseball, which you're probably not so familiar with this American sport, but imagine the guy steps up to bat, right? He's up. He's he's holding the bat, and then just as the pitcher's about to throw, he's like, wait a second. If the ball is moving at this speed and with this curve, and it given the rotation of the earth at this precise time, like, is it really a strike, even if to the umpire it looks like it went over the plate? Like, he holds up the whole game and his potential victory and his responsibility to, like, get on base or hit the ball or whatever, to engage everyone in this intellectual discussion.
How do
Yeah.
you define no? Huh? I'm not defining it.
Yeah.
We're doing work here. and
This gets in.
I, are you there, Michael? Did he get frozen? Looks like Michael got frozen. I'm wondering if it's me or him. I'm going to assume it's him and continue the broadcast. Well, if you want to know more, I wrote about it today, and you can see it on my emails, and it's some of the topics we discuss. If transformation is your goal, if being better is your goal, if we're doing work, and if we see that
Call it
responsibility, there he
let's
is.
call it a broadcast.
You were gone. You were gone for me.
Yeah, I was saying
couple
it
of
should still be
great
recording
golden
on both ends, even if one or both of us was missing. So,
Oh, that
all right,
means
Hans. I think it's time to end the stream.
Yes, I think it's great. This is a great topic, and so yeah, it spurs me on to find better ways to bring that to people. To me, the core is this: when you're spending time, when you're giving energy to the truth inquiry, that's energy you're not using, you're not spending on the inquiry of your own transformation, your own salvation, your own growth, your own power. And so you really choose where do you want to spend your energy. So great
By the way,
conversation, Michael.
this is everywhere. Like right now, you see people debating the Israel Palestine, conflict that's going on, and each side making the case with all the facts, the historical facts about who's right and who's wrong based on what the quote unquote truth is. And yeah, it's just not a productive discussion if what we want is peace in a world that works. So yes, the
Yes.
truth matters, but it's oftentimes contributes to more conflict and more war. So honesty and validity also matter if we are to be we are to be great leaders and creators for our people.
Yes. How many people have been killed in the name of truth? There is a William Burroughs said there's no truth that is not human made, and that's a great reminder.
I'll research the truth of exactly how many people have been killed and get back to you in a few years after life passes me by.
Well done,
All right,
Michael.
Hans,
Thank you.
we'll be back.
See you guys later.
Thank you guys.